FSSAI ने इस इंसिडेंट के बाद यह डिसीजन लिया कि वो अपनी सेफ लिमिट को और बढ़ा देंगे। इसलिए हमने ये सोचा कि स्पाइसेस की जो लैब रिपोर्ट होगी उसमें पेस्टिसाइड्स के कैटेगरी में हम आपको EU और FSSAI.
Some of you might have seen the video by Trustified, which conducted a lab test on Maggi's Magic Masala product. And the finding, which has caused some controversy, is the amount of pesticide found per serving. As per the lab test conducted by Trustified, all the pesticides found are under the maximum residue limit, or MRL in short, specified by the FSSAI, which is 0.1 mg per kg for many pesticides. However, the pesticide levels are higher than the MRL set by the European Union, which is 0.01 mg per kg, and thus the product fails as per the European Union standards. So, which MRL should we consider, the FSSAIs or the EUs? Before April 2024, the FSSAI MRLs were also the same as the EUs, that is 0.01 mg per kg. But after April 2024, the MRLs were increased to 0.1 mg per kg, but not for all pesticides. The rules were differently for registered and unregistered pesticides. If a pesticide is registered, it simply means that its safety to be used while growing food has been studied. This safety data then translates into an MRL. However, this MRL may or may not be available for spices and culinary herbs. We'll abbreviate this as just spices now. If MRLs are already present for spices, these remain unchanged. India has a total of 295 registered pesticides, out of which 139 have MRLs for use in spices. If a pesticide has an MRL for a non-spice commodity, but not for spices, the FSSAI will take the MRL specified for that spice by an international standard set by the FAO known as the Codex Alimentarius. Since out of the 295 registered pesticides, 139 have MRLs for use in spices, the remaining 156 don't have MRLs for spices and will be referred to in the Codex, which contains MRLs for approximately 75 pesticides for spices. If a pesticide has an MRL for a non-spice but not for spices, and there is no MRL specified in the Codex either, then the new default MRL is 0.1 mg per kg. Out of the 156 remaining pesticides, whichever don't have MRLs present in the Codex, their MRL would be 0.1 mg per kg. Now let's talk about unregistered pesticides. If a pesticide is unregistered, it means that we have no data about its safety for any crop in India. In this case also, the MRL for that pesticide is set to 0.1 mg per kg. There are probably thousands of unregistered pesticides, making an increase in MRL of this category a major issue. The major backlash that occurred against the FSSAI was for two of the above scenarios. Number one, the scenario where the MRL of a registered pesticide is defaulted to 0.1 mg per kg, even when there is no MRL in India or the Codex. Number two, the scenario where the MRL of an unregistered pesticide is defaulted to 0.1 mg per kg. In our opinion, the backlash is valid because if there isn't enough data to prove its safety, then it is better to be safe than sorry and set the lowest possible MRL of 0.01 mg per kg as is done by the EU. The reason cited by the FSSAI for increasing the MRL to 0.1 mg per kg was the request of various representations which could possibly mean the request of companies that found the older MRLs too restrictive because they were too low. Many of these companies often export to or operate in other countries which have lower MRLs and routinely adhere to those. This makes you question why such requests were accepted by the FSSAI. The ideal response to these requests should be to simply ask the company to follow better manufacturing practices, not lower the standards itself. If an increase in the MRL limits has even a slight chance of posing a risk to the health of the citizens of this country, the MRLs shouldn't be increased at all. This is why the EU keeps such low MRLs for pesticides where there isn't enough safety data for their use. The FSSAI justifies this move by stating that they are simply keeping up with international standards such as the FAO's Codex Alimentarius. This is perhaps okay when picking up an MRL for a pesticide from the Codex because it has at least some safety data. But how is a blanket increase for the MRLs of unregistered pesticides to 0.1 mg per kg justified? The FSSAI states that since spices and culinary herbs make up just 0.5% of our diets, increasing the MRLs of pesticides won't pose any risk to our health. But by that logic, the European Union should have MRLs higher than 0.1 mg per kg for pesticides and spices, since Europeans eat even lesser spices than Indians. The FSSAI states that they have reports to back up this decision. But since I am not a toxicologist, I cannot interpret these reports and give you a firm conclusion. Here is what some experts on this topic had to say about the change. You can pause the video to read their statements. Clearly, most expert opinion is also not in favor of increasing the MRLs to 0.1 mg per kg. So, what should you do as a consumer? Consider buying whole spices and grinding them at home, either in small batches whenever you cook or large batches for the whole month. You can do this by using an electric spice grinder or a mortar and pestle. Although this is not as convenient as buying ready-made powders, you should consider it to experience the following advantages. The primary advantages. Although the whole spices would still have some pesticides, you can remove them by washing, since most of the pesticides are simply on the surface of the spices. Something which is impossible with pre-ground spices, since the pesticides are already mixed into them. After washing, you can sun dry them or roast them briefly in a dry pan to remove any moisture and possibly degrade any heat sensitive pesticides as well. The secondary advantages of using whole spices as opposed to pre-made powders are: number one, they help you reduce the consumption of adulterants. Since whole spices are harder to adulterate, it's easier to avoid consumption of adulterants. Any adulterants you can see, you can directly remove them with your hands. Number two, flavor. Pre-ground spices lose their flavor upon extended storage, meaning that most of the spice powders in your kitchen are not as potent as they were when you bought them. They'll probably become extremely flavorless as compared to freshly ground spices. Freshly ground spices will ensure that you consistently get much better flavor, especially if they are ground right before cooking. So to summarize, buy whole spices, wash them in water to remove pesticides, then thoroughly dry and lightly roast them to remove any remaining moisture, and finally, use a small electric grinder or mortar and pestle to grind and use or store them. Hopefully you found the video useful and you have a better understanding about the whole issue of pesticides in spices. We can only hope that the FSSAI reduces the MRLs to 0.01 mg per kg once again in the near future, so that we as consumers can feel a little safer every time we purchase a pack of our favorite masalas. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.